We anticipate in the next 10 to 12 years approximately 8 to 6 million Hispanics coming into the United States and 41 million Asians. You have been the majority minority for 400 years in this country. You have been the number 2 population for 400 years. You're going to get kicked out of being number 2. You're going to go down and become number 4. Now, common sense, even a 3rd grade education would tell you, if you didn't get anything when you were number 2, you all jumped ahead of me, but anyway, you can guess what you're going to get when you become number 4.
President Biden, do you support reparations?
Well, I mean, since I haven't spoken on this, got a chance. Number one, the reason we're the country we are is because of immigration. We've been able to cherry pick the best from every single continent. The people who come here have determination, resilience. They are ready to stand up and work like the devil. We have 24 out of 100 children in our school today is Hispanic. The idea that we are going to walk away and not provide every opportunity for them is that not only stupid and immoral, but it's bad for America. They are the future of America. Systemic racism that has plagued our nation for far, far too long. I said that over the course of the past year that the blinders have been taken off the nation, the American people. What many Americans didn't see or had simply refused to see couldn't be ignored any longer. Those 8 minutes and 46 seconds that took George Floyd's life opened the eyes of millions of Americans and millions of people around all over the world. It was the knee on the neck of justice, and it wouldn't be forgotten. And it's not white Americans' fault, but just a fact.
At the very same time that America refused to give the Negro any land, through an act of Congress, our government was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that it was willing to undergird its white peasants from Europe with an economic floor. But not only did they give the land, they built land-grant colleges with government money to teach them how to farm. Not only that, they provided county agents to further their expertise in farming. Not only that, they provided low interest rates in order that they could mechanize their farm. Not only that, today, many of these people are receiving millions of dollars in federal subsidies not to farm, and they are the very people telling the black man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. And this is what we are faced with. And this is the reality. Now, when we come to Washington, and this campaign, we are coming to get our check.
We are owed $104 trillion on the very low end, plus $735 billion recurring. This number does not include the cost of about 50 Black Wall Streets that were decimated, nor compound interest from 2017 when Sean D. Rochester's book, The Black Tax, was published, nor the cost of Black life, nor the cost of living increases, nor the war on drugs, nor the current day pandemic. The number I'm working with is for slavery, Jim Crow, and accrued ongoing systemic racism, oppression, and disadvantage in the country our ancestors built with their lives. Good evening on the West Coast. Good evening in the mountain. Good evening in the central. Good evening on the East Coast. I don't have my background music. I had to choose because my batteries are low on my remote to play my theme song. So I figured, hey, we need to stay on message. We need to keep the message matters more than the music. Okay? Especially after today's show earlier on As the World of ADOX Turns, when I talked about the 100th memorial of the Tulsa race massacre. Yes, something in what I read from the 3 remaining living over 100-year-old witnesses of the massacre, basically imploring upon us to keep this fight going because they may not live to see justice. I pray they do. Brian, you shared earlier that they were offered $10,000 apiece. What an insult. I don't know where that source was, Brian. If you could share it with me in the link, I will pull it up and read from it. But how diabolical that you decimate a more than thriving Black community that built themselves from nothing. We build ourselves from nothing. You decimate it and offer the descendants of that horror, who are in their hundreds now. The eldest one, Miss Viola Fletcher, 107, of sound mind, to retell the horror she has lived every day of her life since. And you have the unmitigated goal to offer $10,000? Oh my God. You might as well have said zero. That is an insult of exponential proportion. So you see, when I did that show earlier, it helped me to feel like going on, just like you guys. When you watch the videos, when you share the videos, when you turn on your notifications, when you donate to the show. Because I need to be independent of these places. New Black media is being shadow banned. They want to silence us in the same way they did Donald Trump. That's why I kept sharing. I really don't know why folks are celebrating the fact that his First Amendment rights are being impeded upon, trampled upon. That means our First Amendment rights to free speech. We're being censored. And I get it. ScrewTube and Facebook, that's y'all's platforms. That's y'all's corporations. And that's why I've established the rep respect. And you need to go over there and sign up for the mailing list. So, when they get tired of hearing the truth over here and decide to just yank the cord, I'll know how to reach you. But I say all that to say is that we all have a responsibility to keep going for our ancestors' sake. They didn't give in, up, or out for our emancipation, nor our civil rights that we enjoy to this day, as do all the immigrants in this country enjoy, and white women who have been coined a minority with our affirmative action. And I get pretty tired of hearing people be negative Nancy and Neds about the reality of our reparations. What I say to that is, thank God we didn't need your consciousness to enjoy the freedom to the extent we have them today. Thank God we didn't need your consciousness when our ancestors chose to storm the Union camps, to lean in on Abraham Lincoln to give us our emancipation. Now, what you currently see today is them trying to ethnically cleanse us about this country, weaponizing immigration against us, making folks with pale skin white, and Black folks with money white, to be the face of the puckery. There are two ways to be white in this country. You can buy your way into whiteness, which is the only kind coming over the border. You can't be in this country and not have money. Here's one article from Daily Mail UK. I don't see the link, Brian. I'll wait for it and I'll pull it up. So you can be Black and be made white. Your money makes it so. And so you got a lot of these Black immigrants who are sitting up here getting in the way of the reparations that are long overdue us, because their money helps them access whiteness in this country. You see, my sister, friend, and comrade from the DMV shared something with me earlier that's just unconscionable. I'm going to read it to you. To my point, you see, I want to read it So Black immigrants that visit the station, that visit the channel, don't think I'm making ish up. And these are the people that they're putting into office to dominate over ADOCs. These are the people they're replacing with ADOCs. This is Dr. Willie J. Montague. I want y'all to give him the BLUES over in Twitter. He is at Rep Montague. REPMO, capital MONTAGUE. I'm Black and I'm running for Congress. You're not oppressed. You're lazy. So, these are the types that Harriet would have shot. These are the types. So one person respond, oh, look, they got Slick Willie in here, shucking and jiving. Dude, you just a prop. Little 80s baby, don't know nothing about Black history in this country. If the GOP want Black votes, they have to pick better candidates in tune with Black people, not the ones looking for white gays. A lot of these immigrants, Black people, say this dumb shite to set you white supremacists up and expose y'all. He says, you're right, you are Black, because Black people wouldn't have you. You're also a disrespectful asshole, runner or descendant of runners. You pay homage to the people who allowed you to be here. Funny how they never called us lazy until we stopped working for free. Imagine the Kings and Youngs and Jacksons doing the work to make America safe for the Montagues to come to only to be repaid with this monkey business. Damn shame. Is this what it takes to win in Florida? Mister is working extra hard for that white supremacist vote. Bless his heart. Oh, they give him the business, giving him that work. But I say all that to say that nothing is going to happen without us continuing to put consciousness around it happening. We can't sit up here and start to buy into this hype. 100,000 is an insult merely in the fact that these survivors lost out on exponentially more than that amount in their 100 years of livelihood. Yeah, I think the atrocity they claim is worth about 25 million in today's dollars. I believe it's more than that, but okay, it wasn't 10,000, it was 100,000. You decimate an entire wealth of a people who built it from nothing, and you want to offer a measly 100,000. So anywho, this is why we must continue to stay on our square, no matter who shows up to listen, no matter if it's just me and Brian and the rest of you. Welcome to the live. No, it's imperative that we do this work because they didn't quit on our freedoms, and we shouldn't quit on our children just because we don't believe it's going to be done. Okay? Just because we don't believe it's going to be done. We need to lean in. And so tonight's show had to alter a little bit as I think of a way to commemorate our soldiers who have fought in every war and who find themselves anchored to the bottom of this Titanic called capitalism in the very country our ancestors built with their lives. Okay? So I want to dig into a little bit of history about the Red Summer before I finish Samaria Rice's story. Definitely going to finish that. But today I was a little thrown off because not only is it Memorial Day, it is also the 100-year, this is the 100th year since the Tulsa race massacre, where white folks just pummeled everything we had built from our bootless straps. in Tulsa, Oklahoma, Greenwood. Now, we've got about 50 or so of those. That's just one. So that kind of altered my show earlier because I've got to pay homage in the moment to our living and our legendary ancestors for the price they paid for me to enjoy the freedom of speaking to you right now. Today is that kind of homage day. So if we can't get to Samaria Rice and Elijah McClain, I'll roll it to tomorrow. But it was important for me to dig in about our Black vets. So let me get going with it because I've only got about an hour with you and I want to read your comments. Red Summer of 1919, how Black World War I vets fought back against who? Racist mobs. When dozens of brutal race riots erupted across the U.S. in the wake of World War I and the Great Migration, Black veterans stepped up to defend their communities against white violence. And this is why I want to say it was Lyndon B. Johnson started his outright war against ADOX, was when the vets got involved to protect us. That's when you saw the war on poverty make a shift to the war on crime. They made it criminal for us to stand our ground against the very domestic terrorists they refuse to label to this day and instead care more about their First Amendment right to police us in our communities than they do our Black lives. The ink had barely dried on the Treaty of Versailles, which formally ended World War I, when recently returned Black veterans grabbed their guns and stationed themselves on rooftops in Black neighborhoods in the nation's capital, Washington, D.C., prepared to act as snipers in the case of mob violence in July of 1919. Others set up blockades around Howard University, a Black intellectual hub, creating a protective ring around the residents. White sailors recently home from the war had been on a days, plural, long, drunken rampage, assaulting and in some cases lynching Black people on the Capitol streets. The relentless onslaught proved contagious, escalating in dozens of cities across the U.S. in what would become known as the Red Summer. Welcome to the live. The racist attacks in 1919 were widespread and often indiscriminate, but in many places they were initiated by white servicemen and centered upon the 380,000 Black veterans who had just returned from the war. Quote, because of their military service, Black veterans were seen as a particular threat to Jim Crow and racial subordination, notes a report by the Equal Justice Initiative. Indeed, many African American soldiers returned from the war armed with a renewed determination to fight segregation and a near constant barrage of brutality. Oh, I jumped. I wanted you to see these brothers. This is the members of the 369th Infantry Regiment, also known as the Harlem Hellfighters, who were awarded the coveted Croix de Guerre from the French government before heading home after World War I, 1919. Okay. I'm going to pull this article up so I can leave that of them over there and I can continue to read. I've chosen to pay homage today, for those of you who have just joined the live, to our Black vets. I hope you can still see that. Let me come over. Yes, you can still see it. I wish you were a little bigger. Let me see. Okay, I'm going to leave it like that to pay homage to our heroic Black vets. Welcome to the live, family. I see you, Denise Jarrett, expert stylist, and I see you, DH. Denise says, thanks again, Angela, for your consistency. Darling, I thank you guys for consistently showing up. This doesn't get done unless we do it, family. Nobody can give more of a damn about ADOX than ADOX. And so, yeah, God gave me this voice. What's up, William Dickens? I see you, family. God gave me a voice, and this is the way she told me to use it. So there it is. Boom. The God in me says to use your voice to tell Pharaoh to let the people go and to pay them those reparations in the trillions over multi-generations. Because what they want us to do is to give in, is to give up, is to give out. But then I look to my legacy and I say that's nowhere in my lineage. And so I won't let the topic go. But that's what they want us to do. They want us to let it go, but they owe us in the trillions over multi-generations. It's not welfare. And tomorrow you're going to find out, because I'm dedicating this hour to our Black war vets. You're going to find out the cost of this pandemic and what it's doing to wipe us completely off the monopoly board. They don't want you to know it, but I'm going to tell it, because anger gets shit done. So I'm hoping enough of us will give a damn to get involved and to lean in on government and to not give me excuses like it's not going to happen. Keep that off from over here. I don't want to hear it. I got a single one-track mind. My focus is reparations, because I understand if we don't get it, we're done. I understand that they're putting in immigration. Immigrants are all running through the government, all running through the politicians. And if you think you didn't get nothing from white folks, you'll get less than nothing from them, who have been trained to be the biggest white oppressors. They're only concerned about their group, which is why I'm only concerned about my group. Okay? And you got to get selfish for your kids' sake. You can't afford to have nobody else on the tit no more, run around here trying to be kumbaya with groups that don't give a damn about you. I don't see none of them sounding the alarm about the reparations. None. Because capitalism needs an anchor, and they don't want to be it. And we don't deserve to be it. So I'll be here until they cut the checks and the trillions over multi-generation. That's my square. Back to the text. Because of their military service, Black veterans were seen as a particular threat to Jim Crow and racial subordination, notes a report by the Equal Justice Initiative. Indeed, I did that part. A postal official wrote at the time that as far as back as the first movement of the American troops to France, the Negro publicists began to avail themselves of the argument that since the Negro was fit to wear the uniform, he was therefore fit for everything else. In Texas, A federal agent reported one of the principal elements causing concern is the returned Negro soldier who is not readily fitting back into his prior status of pre-war times. Me speaking. This is akin to the punkery that Abe Lincoln tried. He tried it. After they used us up, after they made chattel of us to grow the wealth to form the country, his white ass wanted to expatriate us back to Haiti or wherever. Africa, I don't even remember the specific place, but the goal was to free us and get rid of us so they could enjoy the fruits of this country that was built on the back of our ancestors' heinous chattel slave labor. They wanted to remove the reminder akin to this. They knew full well these armed military men were not even remotely going to fit back into their prior pre-war status. They knew that. Same thing. And so when they couldn't get rid of us, they just got rid of us in the history books. Which is why you see the Republicans fighting for the whitewashing of the history, because they don't want to remember, because they want us to eat the cost of slavery. This is what this fight is about the critical race theory. Like the liberals pretend to even give a damn, because it is a show, you know, it's political theater. They don't give a damn. If we learn the true and accurate history, we've got to teach that to ourselves and to our children. Back to the text. You guys know me. When I have a thought, when God speaks, I just let her have her way. At the same time, cities across the North were being reshaped by the Great Migration. By the end of 1919, about 1 million African Americans had fled segregation and a total lack of economic opportunities in the South for northern cities. Between 1910 and 1920, the Black population in Chicago grew by 148%. And in Philadelphia by 500%, creating massive anxiety among white people in northern cities that Black people were taking jobs, housing, and security from them. Me speaking. In the same way, this government has neutralized us economically to replace us with the immigrant migrant. Do you see the correlation? Except we're outgunned, outmanned, and outmoneyed. And we've got a CBC that gives more of a damn about all lives mattering over Black lives mattering. ADOC's lives in particular. Black immigrants' blues will never be ours. They've given them jobs and money. Not as much money as Asians, but enough that they got access to whiteness in a way that we don't still in our 500 plus year Holocaust. Excuse me, family. Back to the text. During the Red Summer, massive anxiety became mass violence. Between April and November of 1919, there would be approximately 25 riots and instances of mob violence. 97 recorded lynchings, recorded being the operative word. We know today that of the lynchings we know about, there's 20 times more that we don't. And instances of mob violence and a 3-day-long massacre in Elaine, Arkansas, during which over 200 Black men, women, and children were killed after Black sharecroppers tried to organize for better working conditions. This is what white folks do after they use you. They break their toys. They use ADOCs, and then they break us. The Ku Klux Klan, who, oh, by the way, has yet to be labeled the domestic terrorists they are. Why is that? Because they run the government. And they're all over the police force throughout the country, coming into our communities and executing us with impunity. The Ku Klux Klan, which had been largely shut down by the government after the Civil War, how so when they run the government? Experienced a resurgence in popularity and began carrying out dozens of lynchings across the South. It doesn't matter if you've got legislation and you don't enforce it. Just a few years earlier, many young Black men had heeded Wilson's call to make the world safe for democracy and gone off to fight for America in one of history's bloodiest wars. Now they had come back to a country that recognized neither their service nor their humanity. Having just returned from battle, however, Black veterans were not inclined to take the abuse lying down. Across the country, former soldiers used their government-provided weapons training to defend their neighborhoods against vicious white mobs. Black people formed self-defense organizations to try to keep white folks from terrorizing their communities, says Simon Balto, a professor of African American history at the University of Iowa and author of Occupied Territory, Policing Black Chicago from Red Summer to Black Power. Black veterans are instrumental in that. Black veterans were a large part of what made the summer of 1919, in the words of historian David F. Krugler, the year that African Americans fought back. Now we've been neutralized, disarmed, and are being censored. This is the country to which we soldiers of democracy return. This is the fatherland for which we fought. W.E.B. Du Bois, a civil rights activist and prominent intellectual, wrote in Crisis magazine in May 1919, a month after the earliest event of the Red Summer, a riot in Georgia where 6 people, 2 white officers and 4 Black men, were killed at a church. What's new about today, family? We in 2021. But by the God of heaven, we are cowards and jackasses if now that war is over, we do not marshal every ounce of our brain and brawn to fight a sterner, longer, more unbending battle against the forces of hell in our own land. Riots at the steps of the Capitol. Washington, D.C. had 5,000 Black veterans, and for many of them, self-defense was a last resort after weeks and indeed decades of government inaction. Akin to how the Biden administration weaponized Trump's bad behavior to get 87% of our electorate running to the polls to replace that racist in office of 4 years with no record against ADOX, with racists in office a combined 65 years with records against ADOX, several New York City blocks long. Total inaction since, except to give Asians protections and 80.5 million for COVID relief when we're dying disproportionately from COVID and are being evicted disproportionately and now staying at extended stays where we're paying twice as much as what we once did for rent all over the country during the pandemic, which is designed to wipe the rest of ADOC still standing completely off the monopoly board. This pandemic is designed to finish us from what Barack Obama, who created 1 million white millionaires during his tenure, while over half of ADOC's homeowners lost all the wealth they had in their possession, their homes. And all these policies to fix these benign neglect to fix the benign neglect of our people are always a day late and a dollar short. Yes, he had some keep your home program that followed, but it was not until after far too many of us lost our homes. One of the first people killed in Washington, D.C.'s violence was a 22-year-old Black veteran named Randall Neal. At a high point of the mayhem, one Washington newspaper reported that the city had passed through its wildest and bloodiest night since Civil War times. Many of the city's white-owned newspapers fanned the flames of terror, reporting on fabricated instances of Black men assaulting white women. Isn't that the lie they told to jumpstart the Tulsa race massacre, which killed over 300 and rendered 10,000 homeless and rendered 6,000 that remain in internment camps? In one case, the Washington Post ran a front page story advertising the location for white servicemen to meet and carry out further attacks on Black people in the city. What's new to this day? This is why you got the new Black media. They're not dealing with our issues unless we make it a thing over here in social media, on the screw tubes, on the Twitters, on the Facebooks. This is the way we fight now. Just to get a second on the corporate news network with 3 Ks. If we don't keep it alive, it dies. Because they're busy over here trying to censor us, all the while seeing the momentum behind us to use it to put it in the spin cycle. They use our talking points to give it to the boule between celebrities and politicians to spin it into stuff like they don't need reparations, they just need an apology. That story's coming. I can't jump ahead of my week. That story's coming.
That's what they do. And that's why we got to keep leaning in, family. We can't stop. I don't get a day off. Moving on. Washington, D.C., like Tulsa, like Greenwood, had a vibrant Black middle class that in many ways epitomized Black people's slow but expanding economic and social advances. The city's Black population was growing rapidly thanks to the Great Migration, and in 1919, they made up a quarter of the population. They also held many jobs in the federal government and at the country's first Black-owned bank, the Industrial Savings Bank. It was a limited but steady march forward, one that many white people felt needed to be stopped. I knew it to be true, but it was almost an impossibility for me to realize as a truth that men and women of my race were being mobbed, chased, dragged from streetcars, beaten, and killed within the shadow of the dome of the Capitol that our ancestors built at the very front door of the White House, wrote James Weldon Johnson, who coined the term Red Summer in Crisis magazine. As the situation escalated, Wilson refused to act. He worried that the riots would damage the image he was cultivating of the United States as a global paragon of justice. But you weren't fooling nobody. They calling America with 3 Ks out all over the world, in every language. Wilson also had a demonstrated record of racism, including, among other things, tacit support of the Ku Klux Klan. To my earlier point, they're in government. They weren't trying to get rid of the KKK, or they could have gotten rid of the KKK. They are the KKK on both sides of the aisle. After 4 days of racist mob violence in Washington, D.C., an estimated 40 people were killed and dozens more were injured. The chaos was only quelled when 2,000 federal troops were deployed onto the city streets at the end of the month, just in time for the riots to spread to Chicago. A murder in Chicago ignites a city. Just 2 days after federal troops withdrew from Washington, D.C., a Black teenager was killed by a white man in Chicago, lighting the match that would kick off a week of violent riots. By the end, 15 white people and 23 Black people would be dead. Over 500 people would be injured, and over 1,000 Black families would be homeless after their homes were burned down. The teenager. What's new, family? This is our 500-plus year Holocaust. 17-year-old Eugene Williams was floating on a homemade raft off the shores of Lake Michigan, trying to escape the city's oppressive summer heat, when a white man named George Stauber started pelting him with rocks. Williams had unwittingly drifted past the line that divided the white beach from the Black beach. A rock hit Williams in the head, knocking him unconscious. His body went limp and slipped into the lake. No one got to Williams in time to save him. A white police officer refused to arrest Stauber, despite a growing crowd of angry witnesses to the murder. By the time Williams's lifeless body had been removed from the lake, a crowd of around 1,000 Black people had gathered demanding action. For many, Williams' death was a microcosm of the long-standing violence perpetrated against Black people without consequence. What's new, family? Welcome to your Ida B. Wells 2.0 series on anti-Black racism. In response to the protests, armed white men jumped in cars and tore through the city streets, firing into Black homes and businesses. A white mob marched down the street, assaulting Black pedestrians and torching Black homes. Still, police refused to act. Quote, when the riot explodes, it's not so much some kind of a spontaneous event as it is a culmination, Balto explains. In the 2 previous years, white supremacists had bombed over 25 Black homes in an effort to keep Black people out of the city. The police never intervened. Now they're hired in plain sight because the police departments care more about their First Amendment rights for gainful employment with our tax dollars to come into our neighborhoods as the militarized police to execute us with impunity. Veterans in Chicago formed militias to defend Black homes, neighborhoods, and families when the police and government refused. Thank you, Black vets. God bless you. Thank you. In the time following Williams' death, one group of Black veterans broke into an armory and stole weapons they then used to beat back a white mob. Quote, because many of them have actually seen battlefield combat, they are willing and capable of using violence for the purpose of self-defense, says Balto. Throughout the summer, Black veterans around the country took inspiration from the actions of their brethren in Washington, D.C. and Chicago and followed suit. In a riot in South Carolina, one preacher reportedly said of the Black self-defense units, quote, the males carried their guns with as much calmness as if they were going to shoot a rabbit in a hunt or getting ready to shoot the Kaiser's soldiers. For veterans, a broken promise. As bloodshed spread nationally to South Carolina, Nebraska, Florida, Ohio, among others, Black veterans continue to be targeted. At least 13 veterans were lynched across the United States after the war. Many of them were in uniform, which, when worn in public, many white people saw as an affront to America's racial caste system. It was the opposite of the reception many Black soldiers believed they would receive when returning home. Their choice to serve in the war spurred on by intellectuals like Du Bois, who believed there would be a path to equality. How naive. World War I was very much a broken promise for basically all African Americans, but the people who felt the brokenness of that promise most acutely were the veterans, who had gone and risked their lives for this supposed war to make the world safe for democracy, and then came home to find that the country was still going to deny African Americans the privilege of the very democracy they died for, says Balto. That wasn't unique to the Red Summer or even World War I. A report by the Equal Justice Initiative found that from Reconstruction to just after World War II, thousands of Black veterans were assaulted, threatened, abused, or lynched following military service. No one was more at risk of experiencing violence and targeted racial terror than Black veterans who had proven their valor and courage as soldiers during the Civil War, World War I, and World War II. Despite the events of the Red Summer, 1.2 million Black men would enlist in World War II. What else did they have? What else did they have? You burned down everything they built. You lynched and killed and stole everything we built to render us the anchor of your capitalism. You despicable ingrates. That's what you are. Thieves, murderers. To this day, what do Black folks have? We've been neutralized economically. What does a degree matter if our affirmative action is being used to hire white women, immigrants, and LGBTQIA over ADOX? So what do? Do you stick around to be executed in your environmentally racist communities and tenement housing that you've been redlined into until they decide to execute you for the sake of gentrification? Or do you wait to get arrested at 7 for pick a reason? Because the preschool to prison pipeline is setting you up to do the not so new slavery in jail? What's left? You can't get hired. You're the highest unemployed and underemployed. What else is there? What else was there for these men? The conclusion of the summer of 1919 would not be the end of mass violence against Black Americans. Far from it. 2 years later would see one of the worst instances of racial violence in American history, the Tulsa Race Massacre. I covered this in my earlier archive, As the World of ADOX Turns, your midday wake-up call, during which a white mob attacked residents' homes and businesses in the predominantly Black Greenwood neighborhood of Tulsa. News reports were largely squelched, despite the fact that up to 300 people were killed and thousands left homeless. $10,000 to be exact, 6,000 were placed into internment camps, while the Japanese get 20,000 apiece. It did, however, signal a permanent shift in the way Black people responded to white violence in the United States and presaged increasing self-defense tactics, including when Black veterans once again mobilized during the violence in Tulsa. For many Black people, the way veterans responded to the bloodshed added a sliver of inspiration to the terror of that summer. Before the war, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, NAACP, had 9,000 members, yet By the early 1920s, it had 100,000, signaling a growing boldness and cohesion to the organizing that would eventually plant the seeds of the civil rights movement. You mean the same NAACP backed by Jewish money that's not doing a damn thing to help us get the reparations we're long overdue? So I want to segue. I'm going to take my time a little bit tonight, family. I know I promised y'all I'd get y'all out of here in an hour. But this segment would not be complete without me talking about how the GI Bill's promise was denied to 1 million Black World War II veterans. Happy Memorial Day. The not so happy Memorial Day. The not so happy Memorial Day. I want to share something else, a different picture for this segment. Got to do it, family. Spirit is telling me to finish it. Tell it. Welcome to the live. I'll be over to see what y'all got to say about it. Hold on, family. I got to show my brothers. I love y'all, Black and strong. I understand how we got here, and I understand it ain't your fault. Don't you listen to these agents of chaos try to convince you otherwise. What's up, Tanya Princess? I see you, fam. Make sure y'all can see the beautiful brothers. Hold on. No, not over here yet. Hold on, let me stop that. It must be the next one. Hold on, I got a picture of the beautiful brothers. And then I'll read and tell you how I see it. The way I always do. Yes, yes, yes. There they are. So once again, there we go. Hold on. I hate these ads running through here. Don't know how to stop them. Okay, hopefully it'll stay like that. Let's get into it. The sweeping bill promised prosperity to veterans. But why didn't Black Americans benefit? Sounds like a rhetorical question. When Eugene Burnett saw the neat tract houses of Levittown, New York, he knew he wanted to buy one. It was 1949 and he was ready to settle down in a larger home with his family. The newly established Long Island suburb seemed like the perfect place to begin their post-war life, one that he hoped would be improved with the help of the GI Bill, a piece of sweeping legislation aimed at helping World War II veterans like Burnett prosper after the war. You know, akin to the 40 acres and a mule that was supposed to help us prosper, right? Yeah, you know, before it was taken away from us and then given to white folks in the Homestead Act, white immigrants and white slave owners got reparations for 93 years while we still fight for cash repair in the trillions over multi-generations, you see. But when he spoke with a salesman about buying the house using a GI Bill guaranteed mortgage, the door to suburban life in Levittown slammed firmly in his face. The suburb wasn't open to Black residents. Quote, "It was as though it wasn't real," Burnett's wife Bernice recalled. "Look at this house. Can you imagine having this and then for them to tell me because of the color of my skin that I can't be part of it?" The Burnetts weren't the only Black Americans for whom the promise of the GI Bill turned out to be an illusion. Though the bill helped white Americans prosper and accumulate wealth in the post-war years, it didn't deliver on that promise for veterans of color. In fact, the wide disparity in the bill's implementation ended up helping drive growing gaps in wealth, education, and civil rights between white and Black Americans. While the GI Bill's language did not specifically exclude African American veterans from its benefits, it was structured in such a way that ultimately shut the doors for the 1.2 million Black veterans who had bravely served their country during World War II in segregated ranks. Fear of Black advancement. To this day, might I add, when lawmakers began drafting the GI Bill in 1944, some Southern Democrats feared that returning Black veterans would use public sympathy for veterans to advocate against Jim Crow laws. To make sure the GI Bill largely benefited white people, the Southern Democrats drew on tactics they had previously used to ensure that the New Deal helped as few Black people as possible. Akin to our affirmative action today, if we don't put a secure gate up around the reparations, you can trust and believe everybody will be repaired but ADOX. That's why I use the word chattel. That's why I call us American descendants of chattel slavery. That's the gate. The chattel is the gate. And it's a constant reminder to white folks who want to forget, who want to whitewash our history. I'm not making this pleasant for them to digest. I'm not making what they did to us palpable. We are the American descendants of chattel slavery. We grew to 4 million from the breeding farms. I watched the first episode of Underground, where a sister Stark went out of her mind and boiled her newborn before she would see him endure the heinous chattel slave labor that she and her comrades had to endure. I am on chattel. They will constantly be reminded in every interview. My true lineage, and I'm proud of it, that I survived it because of their strength. You will not whitewash chattel. You will not leave it out to give Irish, the indentured servants, our reparations. Not one of these groups out here can ever profess the word the American descendant of chattel slavery. Not a one. I'm not proud of the actions against my people. I am proud that we survived it. And I'm not going to pretty it for nobody. That's what they want. They want you to drop it. They want to silence you. They want to shadow ban you. They want to disable you. Because you know who you are. During the drafting of the law, the chair of the House Veterans Committee, Mississippi Congressman John Rankin, played hardball and insisted that the program be administered by individual states instead of the federal government. He got his way. Rankin was known for his virulent racism. He defended segregation, opposed interracial marriage, and had even proposed legislation to confine, then deport every person with Japanese heritage during World War II. When the bill came to a committee vote, he stonewalled in an attempt to gut another provision that entitled all veterans to $20 a week of unemployment compensation for 1 year. Rankin knew this would represent a significant gain for Black Southerners, so he refused to cast a critical proxy vote in protest. The American Legion ended up tracking down the congressman who had left his proxy vote with Rankin and flying him to Washington to break the deadlock. Roosevelt signed the Servicemen's Readjustment Act into law on June 22, 1944, only weeks after the D-Day offensive began. It ushered into law sweeping benefits for veterans, including college tuition, low-cost home loans, and unemployment insurance. The GI Bill's effect on Black veterans. From the start, Black veterans had trouble securing the GI Bill benefits. Some could not access benefits because they had not been given an honorable discharge. And a much larger number of Black veterans were discharged dishonorably than their white counterparts because their plans to oppress us are always 50 years ahead of us. Veterans who did qualify could not find facilities that delivered on the bill's promise. Black veterans in a vocational training program at a segregated high school in Indianapolis were unable to participate in activities related to plumbing, electricity, and printing because adequate equipment was only available to white students. Simple intimidation kept others from enjoying GI Bill benefits. In 1947, for example, a crowd hurled rocks at Black veterans as they moved into a Chicago housing development. Thousands of Black veterans were attacked in the years following World War II, and some were singled out and lynched. Though Rankin had lost the battle to exclude Black men from VA unemployment insurance, it was doled out inequitably. Men who applied for unemployment benefits were kicked out of the program if any other work was available to them, even work that provided less than subsistence wages, like they're doing now. They create the pandemic in the lab. It's coming up this week. It cost us our jobs. Now the Republicans want to kill the additional $300 federal minimum unemployment, weekly unemployment benefit. Republicans that dominate over predominantly Black South. We're not being hired because you got to know Spanish now. They're sitting up here pretending as if we could work, and they're pissed that you can be paid more on unemployment than you could to work 40 hours a week. Is that not a damn shame? I wouldn't even admit that to anybody. Being the rulers, the ruling oppressive oligarchs of what is supposed to be the richest country in the world. They have no shame. None whatsoever. That brothers, those that could actually qualify for unemployment benefits because of the high rates of unemployment and underemployment, most of them work gig jobs. I don't know how many of us are actually accepting or receiving unemployment. But it's a shame that our ancestors built the wealthiest country in the world through heinous chattel slave labor, and then are told by the Republicans that you earn too much with this additional $300 a week. Get back to work that they couldn't find even before the pandemic, right? Our unemployment numbers were off the charts before the pandemic. I told y'all the pandemic is designed to wipe us economically completely off the monopoly board. So these aren't new tactics of a government who likes to enrich themselves and their special interest groups and the lobbyists and the foreign countries they're in bed with to rob and steal resources all over the world while giving us peanuts and proudly boasting that it's more, they earn more on unemployment than they do their regular minimum wage job, in which 8 Democrats voted down a $15 an hour minimum wage. Median home price throughout the nation is $340,000. Down here, the median home price is $655,000. Black folks leave it up out of LA. They have no protections under the law. No social nor economic justice and inclusion in California. We're being pushed out. Southern postmasters were even accused of refusing to deliver the forms Black veterans needed to fill out to receive their unemployment benefits. Black veterans and civil rights groups protested their treatment, calling for protections like Black involvement in the VA and non-discriminatory loans. But the racial disparities in the implementation of the GI Bill had already been set into motion. As your CBC studies a cashless reparations. Lean in, ADOX. As the years went on, white veterans flowed into newly created suburbs where they began amassing wealth in skilled positions. But Black veterans lacked those options. The majority of skilled jobs were given to white workers. Now they're being given to immigrants workers, right? I've already done a segment on Obama and Kabama's plans to bring in 500,000 East Indian Brahmin caste to take up the multiple six-figure-a-year tech jobs while preparing our children for the preschool to prison pipeline for the not-so-new slavery. They don't even teach home economics nor industrial arts in the schools anymore. A white post-war housing boom and redlining in Black neighborhoods. To this day, the post-war housing boom almost entirely excluded Black Americans, most of whom remained in cities that received less and less investment from businesses and banks until it's time to gentrify you up out of there. Though the GI Bill guaranteed low-interest mortgages and other loans, they were not administered by the VA itself. Thus, the VA could co-sign but not actually guarantee the loans. This gave white-run financial institutions free rein to refuse mortgages and loans to Black people. Redlining, a decades-old practice of marking maps by race to characterize the risk of lending money and providing insurance, made purchasing a home even more difficult for Black veterans. Lenders froze out poor neighborhoods, ensuring that loan assistance and insurance would be denied. And new white suburbs often came with overtly racist covenants that denied entry to Black people. In 1947, only 2 of the more than 3,200 VA guaranteed home loans in 13 Mississippi cities went to Black borrowers. Only 2 of 3,200 in the midst. Quote, these impediments were not confined to the South, notes historian Ira Katz Nelson. In New York and the northern Jersey suburbs, fewer than 100 of the 67,000 mortgages insured by the GI Bill supported home purchases by non-whites. Failure to receive GI Bill education benefits. Black veterans, in search of the education they have been guaranteed, fared no better. Many Black men returning home from the war didn't even try to take advantage of the bill's educational benefits. They could not afford to spend time in school instead of working. But those who did were at a considerable disadvantage compared to their white counterparts. Public education provided poor preparation for Black students. To this day, and many lacked much educational attainment at all due to poverty and social pressures to this day. As veteran applications flooded universities, Black students often found themselves left out. Northern universities dragged their feet when it came to admitting Black students, and Southern colleges barred Black students entirely. And the VA itself encouraged Black veterans to apply for vocational training instead of university admission, and arbitrarily denied educational benefits to some students. Those students who did try to attend college found doors closed at every turn. A full 95% of Black veterans were shunned off to Black colleges, institutions that were underfunded and overwhelmed by the influx of new students to this day. Now they've got immigrants taking over our universities, our HBCUs. Most were unaccredited, and with a massive influx in applicants, they had to turn away tens of thousands of veterans. To this day, they turn away tens of thousands of students. ADOC students. Though Congress granted all soldiers the same benefits theoretically, writes historian Hillary Herbold, the segregationist principles of almost every institution of higher learning effectively disbarred a huge proportion of Black veterans from earning a college degree. The GI Bill and the racial wealth gap. The original GI Bill ended in July 1956. By that time, nearly 8 million World War II veterans had received education or training, and 4.3 million home loans worth $33 billion had been handed out. But most Black veterans had been left behind. As employment, college attendance, and wealth surged for whites, disparities with their Black counterparts not only continued, but widened. There was, writes Katz Nelson, no greater instrument for widening an already huge racial gap in post-war America than the GI Bill. Today, a stark wealth gap between Black and white Americans persists. The median income for white households in 2019 was $76,057, according to the U.S. Census. For Black households, it was $46,073. Last year was $41,000 for Blacks, $65,000 for whites, $87,000 for Asians. And for us to be more degree than the Hispanics, their median income is slightly higher than ours. Let me come over and see what y'all got to say about it. Welcome to the live, my loves. Brian says, people need to know about all the Tulsas and their destructions that have plagued this country's history. $100,000 is an insult, merely in the fact that these survivors lost out on exponentially more than that amount in their 100 years of livelihood. You better know it, Brian. He's speaking of the Tulsa Massacre, the Tulsa Race Massacre. Brian says, I'm glad these survivors declined on the initial amount. America has become too accustomed to lowballing us, whether in the job market, the housing market, and clearly the reparative market. Absolutely right, Brian. That's why I don't agree with Darity's number. If he wants to do a close your racial wealth gap program, he's free to do that. But to come over here and even remotely pretend like $12 trillion is reparations for ADOCs, I don't want to hear it. We are owed hundreds of trillions. We are owed, according to a mayor's consortium, 6.2 quadrillion, amounting to 151 million per ADOCs. Amos Jones, welcome to the live. You're a double bet. What's up, Jamie Burtnor? I see you, baby. Jessica J, I see you, LD Ward. Thank y'all for joining the live. LD Ward, I need to know of the 50 plus Black Wall Streets we built, Angela. Okay, that's coming. That's coming. I got a map of them. Thank you. I will definitely share about that. Brian says, this is why no one can say that ADOCs are not patriotic. What other group has fought in every American war only to return to the homeland and be treated as second-class citizens? You know it, fam. White supremacists also used the rape culture card in justifying the lynchings of Sam Hose, who was merely defending himself against his oppressive employer. On Black veterans being attacked, so much for H. Hit enter too soon. Meant to type so much for honor our troops. I see you, Tanya. On the GI Bill, they made sure the American dream remains such to the ADOCs masses. Right. And now they're giving position to the new dreamers. To the new dreamers. Well, family, can't wait to see that pandemic live stream. Oh, yes. Hopefully, Jamie Burtnor, she has offered to come back with me to help me unpack that. So I'm going to bring her in to do that show. I'll probably do that live and then have to take it down. But it's a nightmare what's happening to our people during this pandemic. Obsidian. Democrats are the party of slavery. KKK, Jim Crow, FDR, segregation, FDR, Japanese internment camps, lynching, poll taxes, Margaret Sanger eugenics, and voted against women's rights. Republicans passed the 14th Amendment, securing for blacks equal rights under the law, and the 15th Amendment, giving blacks the right to vote over the Democrats' opposition. Yeah, we agree, Obsidian. But a trifecta of either party means George Floyd, 9 minutes and 29 seconds to the neck of my people. Okay, our people. I don't know if you're one of us. I know we've had some issues in the past, but I will not deny you the truth in what you just espoused in the chat. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Yeah. The Democrats right now are weaponizing immigration against us to make us the permanent underclass and to make us eat the cost of slavery in this country. But my square is weaponize the vote, a red top and a blue Congress to protect the over 53% of ADOCs who rely on government assistance by design of institutional systemic racism until they cut the checks in the trillions over multi-generations. We're not bound to ever get that from Mitch the bitch McConnell. That will never happen. It will take a Democratic Congress to get the reparations done. And what I'm offering, as many of my regulars know, is no different than Dr. Charles Morris, pastor of Abyssinian Church, who recommended after we delivered Teddy Roosevelt the White House, he turned around and dishonorably discharged over 167 Buffalo soldiers who were wrongfully accused of murdering a second white man after being quarantined in their barracks for being wrongfully accused of murdering the first. Dr. Charles Morris said, "You shot us when our guns were empty. And for that, we're going to return the same with a blue top of the ticket and a red Congress to protect the Black South." I'm asking us to move as a block and weaponize this vote until they cut the checks in the trillions over multi-generations. That would be a red top of the ticket and a blue Congress until they cut the checks. The vote is the only commodity we've got. That's my square henceforth, and the way I will be voting and what I'll be pushing up and through into the 2024 elections and henceforth and beyond. That may be the last election cycle that it even matters. And with that said, family, I love you black and strong. I thank you so much for joining the live. Please like, share, subscribe, turn on your notifications if you feel so compelled. Please donate to the show. It offsets my cost and enables me to continue educating the masses, making the case for reparations, weaponizing our vote, and advocating fiercely for ADOCs. Okay, so please, 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 help. With that said, family, let me pray our prayer of protection around you, that the light of God surrounds us, the love of God enfolds us, the power of God protects us, and the presence of God watches over us. Wherever ADOCs and its allies are, God truly is family, because you are the face of God. You are the voice of God. You are the body temple of the Spirit of the living God. Thank you, Black ADOCs, veterans, and the ancestors. Thank you. It seems too little. It seems too little, given the cost you paid, that we could have this privilege. But I thank you. DH asks, why have our armed forces, who were led by Democratic presidents over the years, have they not offered to repay the WW2 GI benefits to ADOX vets? DH, they have planned for us to be the anchor of their capitalism. They don't want us to be economically empowered. And every time we've attempted to be economically empowered, they have lynched us, killed us, burned down our businesses and our homes, and decimated us to guarantee we remain the anchor of this country's capitalism. That's the plan. And so to deny them the benefits they're long overdue is the plan. They don't feel anything or any way about it. They pay lip service to pander for the black vote, to keep the sheep walking to the polls. So why? It's because capitalism needs an anchor, and they decided long before they formed the country that we were it. Okay, Tanya says she's going to vote green. I say you're throwing away your vote. There will never be a third party in this country. I'm done voting green. If they can steal a primary and they can steal an entire election, the third parties don't stand a chance. It is a waste of your vote. You are free to do with it as you please. I am voting red, top of the ticket, and a blue Congress. Anything else is throwing away your vote. It's not weaponizing your vote. It's putting it in the trash. We don't stand a chance with our own party. We need to stop these, these dreams. We don't have enough people to coalesce around our own party. The most I can attempt to do is to get people to vote red at the top of the ticket and a blue Congress. We have to fight and weaponize within the two-party system that dominates all the money and all the power. All of this other talk is idealistic, and it will never come to fore, ever. It is a waste of money, time, and energy to be talking about forming another party because they've neutralized the Green Party and the Libertarians. They have hid votes in trucks that never got counted. I'm not doing that anymore. Because even if they won, they have no representation to do a damn thing to deliver us the reparations we are long overdue. We need to stop playing checkers and play chess. You make it a beautiful God-inspired rest of your evening until tomorrow noon for your midday wake-up call. Peace.